Welcome, Greek U Nation, to episode number 640 of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Mike Ayalon, CEO of Greek University. I'm a speaker and an author. Our ninth book just came out. It's called From Letters to Leaders, The Legacy of Service. So I want you to go and pick up that book on Amazon today. We call these episodes the Fraternity Foodie Podcast because there is nothing like great food to bring fraternity and sorority leaders together. Fun fact, our team just came back from speaking and exhibiting at AFLV Central in Indianapolis, as well as SGLA in Atlanta. And sometimes we find new vendors that are working with the fraternity and sorority community that would make an excellent resource for all of our listeners. And today we are going to be talking about one of these incredible resources. Now, if you are looking to build alumni relationship management tools at scale, we have the answer for you today. Trailblaize turns outdated spreadsheets and email lists into an interactive community. We are going to find out more about this product today with the founders of Trailblaize. Welcome to the show, Owen Ridgway, Ford Hudson, and Adam Perez.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us, Mike. Happy to be here.
Excellent, excellent. Happy to have all you guys on. I really enjoyed getting to meet you guys in person, and I know you have just an incredible product, so I can't wait for our listeners to discover it. Now, I know all of you graduated from Ole Miss in 2025, and this is a very special campus for me because certainly the chapter of Sigma Pi that I work with there started out at 20 and then ended up becoming 300. So it's certainly a very impressive campus for me and for our organization. And all of you were very deeply involved in fraternity life. I'm wondering, what problem did you guys personally experience that made you say this whole thing needs to be rebuilt from scratch?
Yeah, definitely. We had multiple problems, and I think it kind of varies across each of us. My biggest problem was, junior, senior year. You need a job out of college, right? The job market's horrible. It's a huge challenge in our society today. And I was like, what better way to find a job than to tap into your warm network, right? I was a Sigma Chi at Ole Miss, great alumni from that chapter, but ultimately I had nowhere to find those names. There's only a few people in the chapter that really know there's an alumni list. Like when I was in the chapter, I had no idea. So there's the president, and then there's like the chapter advisor and the alumni chair. They're really the only ones that have that list. And so I was never able to utilize that. And that led to just months and months of driving my connections to try to get a job and was unable to do it. So I think for me, bringing that alumni network to life on the platform we call Trailblaize is just a huge help in filtering your search. Hey, I want to live in Dallas, Texas. I want to work in finance. Where do I go? And you get a list of names of those people. You get to see what they look like, where they're from, or where they're currently living, and what they do for work. And that just gives you that warm connection that everyone wants to find when first getting into it. And I know these guys can also give their rundown on that question as well if they want.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we all belong to some of the largest networking organizations on the planet in our fraternities. Our organizations are made up of 100,000, 200,000, maybe even more members. And so the question for all the undergraduates listening is, how do I tap into that? If I want to be in finance or banking or what have you, how do I find all of the other guys or all of the other women that are in that particular industry in my city when I move there after graduation? So it's a
100%.
pretty common question for sure. And a lot of chapters already have access to some of these alumni lists. You mentioned the president, some of the alumni folks that have that job. And there are some LinkedIn groups that I've seen around fraternities and sororities. So, what felt broken to you about these tools, these alumni lists and LinkedIn groups?
Yeah, Mike, the thing that was really fundamentally broken about these tools is that they're static, fragmented, and no one actually uses them or owns them. Um, When I was serving on executive council at Kappa Sig at Ole Miss, I saw that alumni lists were outdated and the spreadsheets die every time leadership turns over. The thing with LinkedIn groups is that they're noisy, unverified, and they're optimized for self-promotion. So they're not focused on the membership aspect of being in the organization, rather just promoting your career, your role, etc. With all these tools, there's really no continuity, no context, and no accountability for monitoring the headcount of the organizations, and nothing compounds over time, which is the opposite of how the real value of alumni is created.
Hmm. Those are some really good points. I like that. And I know a lot of people have these lists, and you're absolutely right. I mean, they're so outdated. When we contact the headquarters and get a list of alumni for a chapter, or even when we contact the advancement office on a local university, a lot of times the information that we find there is completely outdated. They have wrong email addresses, they have wrong cell phone numbers, or they just have no information at all and they're just missing. So that becomes problematic when I'm trying to connect with all of these alumni. So that makes total sense. I'm wondering, why was it important that you were joining Trailblaze for free for individual members, while I see that organizations pay to truly own that space we're creating?
Yeah, Mike, that's a great question. And when you say users, we have a few different users because you have alumni, you have active members, and whereas alumni aren't paying at all, they won't pay a dime, is because they were already a part of the network. They paid their dues, their time when they were there, and frankly the matter is like it's hard to engage alumni. That's why this exists. This is why we show up every day, is because it's not an easy task. And so to ask them to pay for it on top of it is just unrealistic. But in terms of the organization, members are constantly paying dues for tools and resources and everything else, from food at the house to events, socially, philanthropy, whatever it may be. And so this is another tool that they're indirectly paying for, um, that really opens up this network for them. And then when they turn into alumni, they'll never pay for it. So it's a responsibility of the active member, the active organization. And currently we go through a couple different routes. I mean, the individual chapters. So Sigma Pi at Ole Miss, the chapter that you helped really grow and expand and brought to life at Ole Miss, they could pay for it themselves, or the IFC at that university can pay for it, or Sigma Pi Nationals could install it at their level. And whoever is paying for the software truly owns that data, whether it's the individual chapter, the IFC on campus, or the national organization. And so the benefits there, no matter who pays for it, but it's a matter of, like you said, owning that data.
Hmm. Really good points there. And I like that the way that you have it built, because I do feel like the undergraduates have to go to the alumni. If we're waiting for the alumni to come to us, we're going to be waiting forever. They obviously have families, they have jobs, and they're very committed. So it really is the undergraduate's responsibility to reach out and try to connect and really explain what it is that they want to do. And then the alumni can respond, obviously. And I'm wondering, obviously, all of you are fraternity members. You could have designed a more traditional social network like a Facebook, but really for Greek life. So I'm wondering how your fraternity experience shaped the way that you designed Trailblaze differently.
Yeah, my biggest takeaway from my fraternity experience is that I learned that when you join an organization like a fraternity, you're not just a profile, you're part of a lineage. And we believe that traditional social networks flatten that. Trailblaze is built around membership first, so not followers, feeds, or algorithms. It's a private, verified, and organization-owned social network. The chapter and not the algorithm sets the structure, the norms, and all the use cases. So the alumni management, the jobs, the filtering, all of that is the main difference between Trailblaze and a regular social network like Facebook, LinkedIn, or Instagram.
Got it. All right, that makes a ton of sense. I'm wondering, you've had some time with this particular product and you've been talking to a lot of students all over the country. What are some of the biggest mistakes that you see fraternities and sororities making when they're trying to engage alumni?
Yeah, Mike, I don't honestly want to use the word mistake because it's really out of their hands. It's not really their fault. It's more of the chapters, the organizations, the alumni associations have nowhere to host that list of alumni. So at Trailblaze, what we do is we bring that place to host that alumni list, turn it into that social, interactive, LinkedIn style network so that you can truly never miss out on engaging with alumni again. I
Mm.
think that's just as plain and simple as it gets. I don't think there's really mistakes behind it. I
Mm.
mean, besides just a casual email, text, or direct message, that gets the job done to alumni, but not knowing where to start is the biggest factor.
Yeah, you're definitely right. Not knowing where to start is a huge factor. One of the sessions that I led at SGLA in Atlanta was really talking about how do we engage our alumni. And the one thing that I see from my perspective that I would classify as a mistake is that many of the undergrads, their first time that they engage with the alumni is to ask for money. And I'm like, no, I'm like, this is terrible. Like, don't make your first interaction to be asking for cash. Number one, you want to build a relationship with them first, right? So
Definitely.
that's number one. But also, many times, if an undergraduate is asking for money, immediately my antennas go up. I'm thinking to myself, all right, you're going to use this on beer, aren't you?
Yeah.
And so, so like, I'm immediately worried. So what I would say is, number one, cultivate that relationship. And later, once you have their time, once you have their expertise, then you could ultimately ask them for money. But also, I think you want to be very specific in terms of what your needs are. So, say like, hey, we're trying to build a trophy cabinet for all the awards that we won at SGLA. And then maybe I want to give towards that particular project because I can see that it's useful. But also, I think when you're raising money too, I think it's also more effective when the alumni ask another alumnus versus an undergraduate asking an alumnus. So, from my perspective, I think that's probably some of the biggest mistakes that I see when students are engaging alumni.
Yeah.
So, I don't know what your thoughts are. What do you think?
I think that it's really it's really spot on to what you're saying is that because Ford is right, there is no mistakes when you're trying to engage in alumni because you got to do what you got to do. And as an active member, it's you're really not given a lot of guidance unless you have a chapter advisor or someone like yourself who's dedicating time. But we like to structure alumni in three different categories. And there are the physical advisors that give back physically that are there, like yourself. There's financial donors that give back financially, and that's extremely crucial. You need that. You need that to continue having an up-to-date house after a certain amount of years. You need that for good philanthropy reach, because that's a really big aspect of these organizations. But that leaves a really big chunk of alumni that aren't physically there. Maybe they moved away, or maybe life just got too busy. And then you have the alumni who just donate money, or maybe that's all they do, and that's perfectly fine too, and great. You need that, but where we really see Trailblaze being an instrument is to bring that big chunk of alumni that don't do either of that, but can give back themselves. They can give back in a way by just giving a kid career advice, opening a door for them, introducing them to someone in an industry they're interested in. And if they don't want to do that either, then they can use it for their own benefit. We've seen a lot of alumni get really excited to help out the younger guys, but also to realize like, hey, this is a network I joined 20 years ago. I haven't reached out to them or they haven't reached out to me. I honestly forget it exists half the time, but this is a way where I can access this network, and whether it's to catch up and get a beer with someone in the same city as me, or if I'm looking to do a real estate project and I need to find someone who's in real estate that's 6 states over, the first place I'm going to go check is Trailblaze because I already know I have that warm intro and connection where I don't have to jump through the typical hoops as you would to get a business connection like that in a certain area. And that's where I see it's a mistake because I mentioned all of that and it all brings the opportunity to donate from the physical to the guys just giving back. If they don't even know about it, then how are they going to give money in the first place? And so that's what opens the door to that as it's not our focus, but it definitely creates opportunity for that for these organizations.
Yeah, you make some great points there. I mean, we have to meet the alumni where they're at, and they're all at different places in their lives, right? So I remember when I first became an alumnus, I was really focused on making a lot of money and building my career. Like that is like kind of the mode you go into immediately after graduation. And so as I got older, as I got married, as I had kids, now I'm, doing well financially, and then you get to a point where you're ready to give back. And that might be in terms of my time initially. And then maybe later on, it's in the form of cash to the chapter. So you really just have to meet them where they're at and understand that that is going to evolve over time. You're not always going to be in the same place over time. And I'm wondering, are there any examples that you've seen where alumni across different generations or different decades have actually connected in meaningful ways through your platform? Like I'm thinking about maybe hobbies as an example. Maybe there's a bunch of our alumni that really like to ride motorcycles. And then now suddenly we have an event where alumni from different decades who enjoy riding motorcycles all go out on a cruise together across the country or something. Have you seen anything like that on your platform?
Yeah, I can answer that. So we do have a feed, like a social feed where actives and alumni can both contribute to. And that's really the place where you can say what you're feeling, say what you need, say what you want, or just post updates. And so, funny enough, my roommate, so he's a Sigma Chi alumni, just graduated in May. He's working in an insurance firm, and an alumni 10 or 15 years older than us commented on his post because he just shared a quick update. This is what I'm doing. I'm in Dallas, Texas, working insurance. Connect with me if you want. And so that older alumni was able to reach out and say, hey, Joe, let's connect. They got in touch, did some business together, benefited both of them. So that's just a prime example of how not only is this beneficial for actives to say, hey, I'm the vice president of this fraternity and I'm doing accounting. If anyone has advice on their futures or like whatever route I should be taking after I finish school, let me know. And that's another example of actually an ATO we had. An Ole Miss ATO just made a simple post about what they do for the fraternity. And these alumni actually that want to contribute will. He said, one of the alumni mentioned, I'm more than happy to open these doors for you and help you out in any way that I can. Find my number on the contact card through Trailblaize. And so they reach out and people are able to help left and right. And so I think that's a really good way that just using that feed in general is a good way to produce those hobbies, like you said.
Yeah, I like that. I think that's really cool. Definitely brings people together. I read one of your undergraduate clients and his quote, and he said that Trailblaze helped members to land jobs, internships, and even deal flow. So I'm wondering, what about your platform makes all of these incredible outcomes possible?
Yeah, it really boils down to three things, and that's trust, signal, and access. So when everyone in a chapter is verified through a shared affiliation, the outreach isn't cold, it's contextual. On Trailblaze, members can see who's hiring, who's mentoring, who's investing, and who's open to helping inside the network with a non-financial contribution. So what we're doing is we're not creating opportunities out of thin air. We're making the existing social capital usable, and that's generations of social capital.
Nice. Really cool. I love all of that. And I'll tell you, the undergraduates are all about their careers and jobs and internships. So I think that's probably why this is such a great platform for them. It really resonates with them right now. Do you have any advice for chapters that want alumni engagement to move beyond just nostalgia and into real tangible opportunities?
That's a fantastic question, Mike, and it honestly leads back into the previous question and answer that Adam provided. And I think it's that the opportunity is already there. It's already in front of their face. And yes, there's room for nostalgia and there's environments and ways for us to support that, the chapter to support that, whether that's an alumni event or a parents weekend or something that the chapter is actually putting on that these guys are aware of and you can go back whether it's a football weekend or just any random weekend in the spring and you can share that nostalgia and you can have that. But I think where a lot of our focus is it's geared towards the like I mentioned in the beginning, the opportunity that's already there. It's already in front of these guys' face. It's right there for them to grab. It's not Adam Ford and I, we're not going and creating opportunity. We're not finding guys to join Sigma Pi and say you were an alumni 30 years ago. They already exist. And I think that's what's so frustrating is that these guys know this opportunity's there. Like Ford mentioned in the beginning, he is part of an incredible chapter. There's no reason why he shouldn't have a list of every single guy that is in commercial real estate in Austin, Texas, where if Ford wanted to move to Austin, he wanted to get into commercial real estate. He knew exactly who he could reach out to. And we're not saying that those people are going to get on their knees and hand you a job. That's not the name of the game. But without using something like Trailblaze, you don't even know that exists. And you still have to they still have to put that in the work. They still have to show up and still be them and be the reason why they get the job. But let Trailblaze be the reason why you even know it exists and even know it's there.
Very cool. I love it. One of the biggest complaints that I have about fraternity and sorority life, and I'm sure you guys have seen it, is really a lack of officer transition. So if you held positions in the fraternity, it's very likely that you were just thrown into that position and they're like, yep, sink or swim. We're just going to throw you into the fire and we hope that you do a good job. See you later. I'm graduating. And then that's it. That's your officer transition right there. So I'm wondering, how does having this central system of record on your platform at Trailblaze, how does that change leadership transitions year over year?
So I think we've done a good job explaining the headcount management of it, but before I move on to that answer, when you create an account as an active member, the day you graduate, your account transitions into an alumni account. And so we're creating the system of record for members, but in terms of actual documentation and how the fraternity operates, as you know, tradition is extremely crucial to the survival of these organizations. And the ones that fail are the ones that lose their tradition. And I think there's a part of that of small things, whether it's certain bylaws or even certain contacts that you have for vendors for maybe the events that you're putting on or anything in that realm from everything of how the chapters are organized and operated. I think keeping that consistent and organized year after year is really important. And so what we did essentially, because we all held positions in our own chapters and we were in three different chapters at Ole Miss and realized that if we're all struggling with this, then everyone else has to be. And we realized after talking to colleges across the country that this is a consistent issue. And let's use the social chair example of the social chair, because I was a social chair in my chapter. And it's all you need to do is create a budget, create the calendar, and then all the contacts you got for those events. And so once you have that, maybe some notes about, okay, hey, for this event, make sure you call 3 weeks in advance. And this bus company owner, he really likes it to be delivered in a check. And so there's no virtual payments. All these like small little notes that are just it's just institutional knowledge, just lore that you gather from being in the chapter, it gets lost. After every 4 years there's a cycle and it's just erased. And the guys come back and it's just a completely different chapter. But if you if you just take the actionable steps now and have this system in or have this in your memory, your system's memory, then it stays concrete year after year. And so if I'm a president and I have all my information that I used as a president, when I transition into an active member, then eventually alumni, the president who starts his next term will have access to everything in my account. And so it's a very seamless process. And I know I went in depth there, but that is a core focus of our platform. Other than the alumni network, I know that's heavily what this calls about and what we do, but we do instill that institutional memory into these chapters.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Now, I was running an entire national fraternity with 120 chapters. And as executive director, I would network with a lot of the other executive directors of all the fraternities and sororities. We actually get together very often, whether it be to play tennis, play golf, go to educational sessions, network, etc. So we actually work together all the time. And maybe a lot of undergraduate members don't really know that, but that happens behind the scenes because we know that we're better together and we can leverage all of the talents of the people running these organizations. So at the enterprise level, Why do you think that it matters that national headquarters should be thinking about these alumni networks at scale?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question, and I have an answer, but honestly, Mike, I think you might be the best one to answer this.
Mm. Well, listen, I would say that, perfect example, recently I was helping to advise the Cornell Sigma Pi chapter, and they ran into a problem. The problem was is that because of water kind of leaking behind the third floor bathrooms, that water ended up going down from the third floor bathroom shower stall to the second floor to the first floor down to the basement and created mold all throughout the house. And that mold needed to be remediated. And so we had to essentially deconstruct and destroy 3 floors worth of bathrooms and shower stalls and rebuild it from the studs all the way back to get rid of all of that mold. And that whole project, that was a $1.3 million project. And really, the undergraduates, of course, they're not going to be able to afford to pay the $1.3 million. So that's not a shock to you. So, really, in order to get out of that situation, we need help from the alumni. And so, if we don't have a central system of record and we're not able to really engage our alumni at scale, then there's no way that we could have done what we've done, which is we raised $1.3 million in 6 months from the alumni. Okay. And the only way that's possible is to have really good central systems of record and regular engagement in order to get to that next level of giving. So I think that's probably the answer to the question. What do you think about that answer, Owen?
I think that's a great answer, and I think there's a lot of utility behind that. And for anyone listening that is in a national seat and spot, that's a prime example of, look, there's a chapter that they're in some trouble. They need some help. Let's utilize their existing network and get it done. And that's fantastic. I think where my answer is a little bit because I haven't been in that national seat like you have. And I think from a different perspective is the organizations are so focused on active members for good reason because they're the ones that are in. And granted, they're 18 to 22 years old and they need a lot of attention. It's just the nature of it. But at the end of the day, I think there hasn't been enough focus on what these organizations breed and what the outcome looks like 10 years later, 20 years later, 30 years later. And I think for a national organization to own that is uh is night and day compared to what's out there now. Because I know you have data in some of these organizations, some better than others, but at the same time, there's nothing that lets you visualize these organizations that's not just a number on a screen, because that's all we've been given so far. But realistically, Sigma Pi, for example, your chapter and the chapter you worked with nationally is full of doctors, lawyers, investment bankers, attorneys, whatever it may be. It is so full of so much success. Like you said, these are some of the best networking organizations in the world. And I think there's just been too much focus on the 4 years in school that it's just pushed the rest of it to the side. And I think if that can be engaged and that can be brought back, then these organizations look a lot different 5, 10 years from now.
Yeah, that's really
Hey,
good.
I'll add something to what Owen said too, and it goes back into the process that you explained on how you guys had to reach out into all of Cornell Sigma Pi's alumni base. Something that we've really learned over the last month or so, operating Trailblaize and meeting with these chapter advisors nationally, national advisors, is that a lot of data that some of these fraternity organizations, and it could be a different story for you, but is that they don't have good data. So we were talking to a national president, and he said that out of their 200,000 plus alumni list, mailing list, half of those emails were .edu emails that were inactive. Um, and that's a huge issue because what we've seen is that when you sign up for the national portal or whatever list that the nationals require, you're using your school email because you're a freshman, you're a pledge. You don't want to, you don't think to that in 10 years you're going to want to donate to the chapter, right? So another problem that we're really solving with Trailblaze is that we're trying to give that virtual identity to the members rather than just having it be associated with a .edu email on a spreadsheet.
Hmm. Great stuff. I really like all of this. And interestingly enough, too, my dissertation is called The Early Warning Signs of Hazing in College Fraternities and Sororities. And one of the outcomes from that particular set of research really was that we need to create a national database of all fraternity and sorority members to help advocate for our chapters. Many of these universities are located in really small towns, and a lot of alumni end up leaving these small towns and going to the big cities. And when that happens, then you have a lot of chapters that are really left behind that don't have advisors. And so if we have that national database of all fraternity and sorority members, then I can find maybe an advisor, an alumnus from another fraternity or another sorority that just happens to live nearby that would be willing to serve as an advisor. And I really think that if you ask me what are the best chapters in the country, they are ones that have alumni advisory boards to help guide and mentor the chapter on a regular basis, as well as the exec board on a regular basis. And so, having that database of all fraternity and sorority members, I think would be extremely helpful going forward to reduce levels of hazing and other problems because they have that alumni oversight that I think is just so critical. Now, if you guys were advising a chapter president or an alumni relations committee chair or even an alumni board, what do you think is the first step they should take in order to rebuild their alumni engagement? I just had an undergrad ask me this from Elon this weekend at SGLA. So, what would be the first step they should take?
Yeah. My answer a year ago would be ensure that every member puts in accurate information. Adam already mentioned, there's .edu emails that are useless 10 years down the road, right? So a year ago, my answer would be, you know, get every possible correct piece of information you can from these people. But now my answer is just schedule a demo with Trailblaize and let us do it for you. Creating that alumni engagement for you, but all putting it all into one place. I think that's the best way to do it.
I love it. All right. So, this has been really helpful, I think, for the undergraduates. How can our listeners, undergrads, or anybody else get started with Trailblaze and set up that demo?
Yeah, it's a very simple process. So we like to be very hands-on because obviously what we're doing is we're creating a new space for your chapter. So how it looks is you go to trailblaze.net and you can schedule a demo there. What we do is we'll get on for 30 minutes and we'll give you a rundown of what the platform looks like, how it'll work, the onboarding process, which we say can take anywhere from a few days to a week, depending on how deep your alumni network is. We determine your channels, your current channels of communication, so that whether that be a quarterly email, maybe an unused Facebook group, whatever it may be, we determine that and we go from there. Users getting on Trailblaze is very simple, but what we prefer is we prefer starting with the obviously alumni advisor, chapter president, whoever is going to see the chapter year over year, so that we can really plant the seed for each chapter.
Fantastic. And I'm just going to spell the website for anybody who's listening on the podcast. It's Trailblaze. That's spelled TrailBlaize.net. Go and check out the website and set up the demo with these guys, and they'll walk you through exactly how to get started. This has been absolutely incredible. Thank you to Owen Ridgway, Ford Hudson, Adam Perez. You guys are the greatest for coming up with this, and I think it's going to be a great tool to help us to move fraternity and sorority forward over the next century. So I appreciate the work you guys have done.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
got
Thank you so
Mike.
much
Thanks
for
for
having
having
me.
us.
Of course. And to all of our listeners, let me tell you something after this interview. If you learned something today, I need you to share this episode with your chapter. So drop a link to this interview in a group chat for your chapter or just share it on social media. You never really know who in the fraternity and sorority community needs to hear this message today from Trailblaze. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you on the next episode of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. Bye for now.